What if your food delivery driver got in a car accident while delivering your food? In today's video, we will explore just that scenario. We will also answer some questions along the way, such as who is liable for what happens to your food if your driver crashes while delivering your food? What if they were at fault? What if it was an accident that was not their fault? And what if the driver of the other vehicle hits you with a "no, I didn't see you"? In this video, we will answer all of these questions and many more. So let's get started. First, let's take a look at this video that went viral recently. It's quite amusing, and it shows how wrong things can go when pizza delivery goes wrong. So there was a guy ordering a pizza. The pizza was delivered by a bike courier. When he arrived at the place where the order needed to be delivered, he decided to ride up the stairs. As you can see, there are a lot of stairs, and then he loses control and crashes. But luckily, both him and the pizza survive the fall. After which he simply dusts himself off and delivers the pizza. This must have been quite an awkward moment for him. Imagine being the customer that receives a pizza that was literally just crashed with and then delivered to your door. That would be pretty insane. Although in the end, nothing too terrible happened in this case, it does raise some interesting legal questions. First, when you order something online and then it is delivered to you, who is the owner of the item during the delivery phase? Second, if the driver crashes, who is liable for any damage caused to your food? Third, if the driver crashes because of another person, is that third person liable for damages as well? Let's discuss each one of these issues. The first question is whether you or the seller is the owner of the item while it is being delivered. This question has been answered by the courts already, and it was established that the seller is the owner of the item until the item is delivered to the customer. In other words, the food delivery driver is not the owner of the food. He is merely transporting it from one location to another. This is not surprising because the driver never really takes physical or constructive possession of the goods. Now that we know that the seller is the owner of the goods, the next question is whether the seller is liable for any damage that happens to the goods while they are in transit between the restaurant and the customer's house. Once again, this question has already been answered by the courts. They held that the seller is not the insurer of the goods, and therefore they are not liable for any damage that happens to them while they are being delivered. In most cases, when someone orders food, they will purchase some type of insurance that will cover such events. But even though the seller is not liable for damage to the goods, what if the driver crashes into another vehicle, causing damage to the other vehicle and possibly injuries to the driver as well? In that case, the driver of the other vehicle might want to seek compensation from the person that caused the accident. But who is that? Is it the person that ordered the food, the delivery driver, or the seller? Well, the answer depends on who is actually at fault. If the delivery driver is an employee of the seller, then the at-fault party is the seller. If the seller is negligent in hiring the delivery driver, then they might also be liable for the damages. For example, if the delivery driver has a history of reckless driving, but the seller is unaware of it, then they might be able to avoid liability by pleading that they were not negligent in hiring the driver. However, if the seller is aware of the driver's bad driving history and does nothing about it, then they are negligent and therefore liable for the damages. On the other hand, if the delivery driver is not an employee of the seller, but rather an independent contractor, then the seller is not liable for any damages caused by the actions of the driver. Let us take a look at a real-life case involving a delivery driver that crashed into another vehicle. In this case, Mr. Smith is driving his car on a public road when suddenly a delivery truck comes out of nowhere and hits him. He sustains injuries, and his car gets significant damages. Who is liable for these damages? Well, The delivery driver is an employee of ABC Delivery Company. Therefore, the company is vicariously liable for his actions. This means that they are liable for his wrongful acts committed within the scope of his employment. Since the driver was delivering a package at the time of the accident, it means that the accident occurred within the scope of his employment. Therefore, the correct answer is that the ABC Delivery Company is liable for the damages caused to Mr. Smith. Another interesting situation can arise if the driver claims that the accident was not his fault, but he is unable to prove it. Imagine being hit by a delivery driver that claims that you are at fault for the accident, but you know that you weren't. How could you prove it? Well, fortunately, there are ways to protect yourself in situations like these. Most cars nowadays come equipped with dash cams that record everything that happens on the road. Even if the driver claims that you ran a red light, you can easily disprove that by checking the footage. Dash cams are very helpful in cases like these, and they can also help you collect evidence in case you need to file an insurance claim. Dash cams can save you a lot of trouble in the future, so it is highly recommended to invest in one. Now let's continue with the video. In some cases, the driver might argue that the accident was not their fault, but they just can't remember what exactly happened. In those situations, the court will typically rule in favor of the party that has more evidence to support their case. In this case, if the driver claims that you ran the red light, but they don't have any evidence to support it, then the court might rule in your favor. However, let's assume that the accident was indeed your fault. In that case, you would be liable for paying the damages caused to the other party. But what if you don't have enough money to pay for them? In that case, your personal assets will be used to pay for the damages. This includes your home, your car, and all of your bank accounts. This is why it is very important to have car insurance, because if you ever cause an accident, the insurance company will pay for the damages instead of you. On top of that, having car insurance is mandatory in most states. In California, for example, drivers are required by law to carry the following minimum limits of car insurance. At least $15,000 for injury or death to one person in an accident. At least $30,000 for injury or death to multiple people in an accident, and at least $5,000 for damage to someone else's property. However, if you are found to be negligent in causing the accident, then your insurance company will not cover you, and you will be required to pay for the damages out of your own pocket. It is important to note that the above-mentioned rules apply to regular car accidents. They do not apply to accidents that occur while the driver is delivering food. Food delivery accidents are governed by a different set of laws and regulations. Typically, food delivery services require their drivers to have commercial auto insurance. This is in addition to any personal auto insurance that the driver may have. The commercial auto insurance policy will typically provide coverage for accidents that occur while the driver is making deliveries. However, the terms and conditions of the policy will vary depending on the provider. Therefore, it is important for drivers to carefully review their policies to ensure that they are adequately covered. In addition to insurance, food delivery services typically have their own rules and regulations that drivers must follow. These rules and regulations will typically prohibit drivers from engaging in certain activities while on the clock. For example, drivers may be prohibited from using their phones or from eating while driving. If a driver violates these rules and causes an accident, they may be held liable for any damages that occur. So what should you do if you get into an accident while delivering food? First, check to see if anyone is injured. If anyone is injured, call 911 right away. Next, call the police and report the accident. If you are at fault for the accident, exchange insurance information with the other driver. Do not admit fault or apologize. Do not admit fault or apologize. It may seem nice to apologize, but it could end up costing you more money down the road. Your insurance company will investigate the accident and determine who is at fault. Finally, contact your food delivery service and let them know what happened. They may have their own rules and regulations about what you need to do in the event of an accident. There are thousands of accidents that happen every single day on our roads. Some of them are minor fender benders, while others can be catastrophic. If you're involved in an accident, it is important to know what to do in order to protect yourself. Hopefully, now you know what to do if you're involved in a food delivery accident by following these tips. You can help ensure that you are not at fault for the accident and that you are adequately covered. In the event of an accident, thank you for watching and see you in the next video.